Hi, I'm Leah Longbreak, president of the Cleveland Association for Broadcasters and a host and producer at Evergreen Podcasts. Today, I am joined by fellow board member Sam Prewitt. Hey, Sam.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Sam is digital sales manager for RadioOne Cleveland and Columbus. So before we get into what your role is, tell us how you even got started in the business. Because I mean, you have had a lot of acclaim as being a rising star in the radio industry. And so, is this something that you've always wanted to do, or did you fall into it?
Well, I always ask people, do they want the long story or short story? Because it's two versions. I mean, are we radio rules, one thought per break, or is this a
Well,
whole
we'll be extended radio, like podcast rules. So there's not a
okay.
commercial break, but we'll get the Cliff's notes for those watching.
Okay. So I'll pretty much give you guys a quick background. As you see, I have my Ohio Dominican sweatshirt on, and that's where I went to school, and that's what started my radio career at Radio ODU. So I started there my freshman year, then became the manager my sophomore year throughout my entire time there. So after I graduated from school, I had to find a job because I was in Columbus and I needed money. So basically, I did my interviews, but I really, really wanted to do radio. I fell in love with it the 4 years that I had been doing it at Ohio Dominican University. And it's such an interesting story where I had a connect who worked at the radio station and, very eagerly I said, hey, you guys hired? So he was like, man, I'll just pass your information over. I mean, you know how it is when people are like really hungry to get in. It's like, all right, calm down. so,
Right.
so basically, I submitted my resume and they said, oh, this is cool, but we don't have any positions open. So, well, actually, I'm sorry, I called first. And they said, this is cool. We don't really have any positions open. So submit your resume anyway, and we'll just keep it on file. So I submitted my resume, went on a job interview for Hertz. I actually got a call back for Hertz. But in the meantime, when I called the radio station to see if they received my resume, he was like, yeah, we got your resume. Do you want to come in and talk? Do I want to come in and talk? What time? So, it's funny how radio is. Radio is a very casual industry.
Yeah.
But I went in this interview with like a three-piece suit because I was going to get this job and promotion. So basically went in, they were impressed with what I did at the radio station. And surprisingly, with no internships ever in life, I was
Wow.
able to land this job in promotions. And I was uber excited and never called Hertz back. So I'm pretty sure they're still upset that I did not give them a call. It was definitely, if ghosting was a thing then, I might have admitted it.
But
So
their loss is our gain.
absolutely. So, and hey, that was 13 years ago. So when we
Wow.
look at the span of 13 years, I started in promotions, went up to my program director, said, hey, I want to be on air. And he said, listen, you make more money at McDonald's doing this. I said, you know what? I don't care. Let's go ahead and do it. So they stuck me on overnights, and I had like a real hard as nails PD, like an old school one that was like, hey, you need to do overnights to pay your dues. So I was doing events as a remote tech and promotions. But then on the weekends, every other weekend at first, which was to every weekend, I was doing board operating and I couldn't crack the mic. So as a 22, 23-year-old, that was excruciating. Like, man.
Yeah.
And I'm glad Instagram really wasn't around then because I didn't really have that. I mean, I had the sense of FOMO, but I didn't have the visual sense of FOMO to actually see it. So from that time, I just worked on my air checks. Funny enough, I actually say I invented podcasts because at one point I took an air check and made it a complete radio show. And this was like in 2009, before like podcasting was a word.
Yeah.
So, I was doing that. That was very successful. That ended up leading me to getting on air. So then I was on air, and I was in Columbus for about 6 years. So the job in Cleveland opened itself up and it was in digital marketing. And mind you, I'm going from program to digital marketing. So it's a learning curve, but they always saw me as a creative. And basically they said, hey, you're from Cleveland. We think you can do the job. So I took it. It was a great move. It was my first full-time gig in radio. I was part-time that entire time. I actually had to get another job because I needed to supplement my income.
Right.
And anybody who is really into the radio life or any media life, you do have to pay your dues. And it gets rough at
And it
times.
can take a while.
It can take a while. So you need to get something else to keep you going. And I happened to go back to my college and worked as an admissions counselor, which helped me because moving back to Cleveland, it was more in the sales role. So moved to Cleveland, learned digital. It was a rough learning curve, but I'm a quick learner. From then, I got promoted to digital sales manager, and most recently, digital sales manager for Cleveland and Columbus, which is pretty much just helping the sales team with the digital initiatives that we have, making sure they hit their digital budgets, and really coming up with cool ideas all day. That's how I describe
But yeah, I was gonna say, Sam, go a little bit more in depth into what exactly your role entails.
So basically, on a day to day, I am checking our budgets, making sure we're hitting our goals for our digital revenue, and also constant meetings with the sales team and clients just about what we can offer on the digital landscape. So we have, even though we're Radio One, we have a lot we offer, and even in Columbus, we actually have TV stations as well. So I can't even say I'm in radio anymore. I have to say I'm in a multimedia company because when I pitch ideas, it's okay. What are your roadblocks? Who are your competitors? And what does success look like to you? And when I have that information, then we come up with some out of the box ideas. And that's my whole thing. So being able to work in the position I work in now, but haven't been on air, haven't worked in events, I can see things in a completely integrated way.
Yeah.
So a lot of my ideas aren't just digital ideas like, yeah, we could do a social media campaign. It's like, no, we can do a social media campaign, which is your first point of contact, which is the first experience that somebody will see, and it ends with an event. And this is how it's promoted on the radio. Because I think about how that sounds when I was on the air. I think about how it should look when I worked on site and bring it all together where I am now. So basically, in a nutshell, the long way to answer your question is just working with the sales team to come up with unique ideas and using our digital products like social media, web banners that you see. We can do a lot of things when it comes to the digital world. And it's just so many things that we could do. I'm just like, let's start with the idea first, and then we can look at how we can promote it. So basically working with the sales team to help them reach their goals.
You brought up a great point because you said you're not just in radio anymore. And
Mhm.
that just shows, not even 13 years, probably in the last year or two, how much that has rapidly changed in the industry, that you're not just considered pigeonholed in radio. You're really multimedia.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the pandemic was the gift and the curse, as crazy as that sounds, right?
No, absolutely.
Because it forced people to adjust. And I think life is about adjustment. If you are just complacent or you stand still, you'll get passed over. And things really changed for us where we know radio is a very event driven business.
Mhm.
So we had a big housing event that we usually have every April. And the client was basically like, well, what are we going to do? It's a pandemic. So I was like, well, we can do a virtual event. Had no idea how to do virtual events, right? But we did it and it was successful and it became the most popular thing that we sell now is virtual
Wow.
because we've learned to connect with people while they're at home. We've learned that we eliminate some roadblocks, especially with the housing event where you would have to go on site. If you miss the information, you just miss it. But there's things that you have to worry about, like do you have a babysitter? Do you have a ride? Are you free that time?
Right.
But when we've done these virtual events, it's like I can go back and watch it anytime I want. I can replay the information. I can send it to a friend. So it just exposed the world of digital, which is so funny because, of course, my job is to preach digital until I'm blue in the face. And when you have an old school radio seller, they're like, well, radio is king. I mean, it's a radio company. But they started to see, and I'm really proud of all of my sellers because all of them jumped on the digital train. Because again, as you said, Leah, the world has changed and you
Yeah.
have to adjust. And we
Mhm.
don't call them listeners anymore. We call them users because they use our product. So if it's, I mean, because most of our traffic comes from mobile devices now, our listen live
Right.
page and everything. Like people still are turning on the radio. It's free. That's the one thing that'll never go away. It's survived the test of time, but
Mhm.
it evolves and people are really moving towards the products that it's evolved to. So again, listening on their phone, listening on their tablets, on the desktop computers, etc. So yeah, they're users, they're not listeners anymore.
You mentioned adaptability and kind of circling back to earlier on, you talking about how you had the hunger, you showed up in that three-piece suit. You talk about how crucial it is to have that attitude and adaptability Especially, I mean, not just for people that have been in the business a long time, but for these students that are looking to study to be in the industry, those that we're helping with our scholarship program, and those that are new, that are interning maybe right now at one of the stations.
Well, I'll say one thing that really brings everything to a point that a lot of millennials are allergic to, and it's work. You got to put in work, man. And I don't want to be that one guy that sits here now, like back in my day. But again, as we said, times has changed. Like
Yeah.
it's funny. Like overnights really isn't even a thing anymore. Like people aren't in the studio anymore, like I was. But I can't hold that over anybody else's head. But one thing that I can say that would never change is you have to put in the work, which means networking with individuals and taking it serious. I think, in my age range, we're in a very interesting point because we are those millennials who are in the middle of the road, who understand the generation before us that put in a lot of work, that will work 10-hour days and everything, versus now where millennials or the younger millennials are like, work smarter, not harder. So it's some things that they do where the older generation is like, well, that's stupid. And millennials are like, no, but that's smart. But really, it is smart, but it's not that whole work aspect that they're used to. So one of the biggest things is, I mean, this is advice to the older individuals who want to give advice to the younger ones, is you have to realize the world is not the same. And your path to success is different from what their path to success would be. But one thing that is always true is you have to take advantage of your networks. You have to work. You have to do things that force you out of your comfort zone. I mean, millennials don't like to pick up the phone and talk anymore. I mean, I hate picking up the phone. Like, do I
But
really have to
sometimes
call
you
people
have
this way?
to.
Yeah, but you have to. It's
Yeah.
like I would rather go online and do live chat rather than really talk to somebody. But you got to talk to people. People need to get a sense of who you are, because you can't really get a good sense of energy in an email or in a social media post or a message. No, you really have to talk to that person, meet that person where they are, and it just really put in the work to show you really want to do it, and it will pay off. It will pay off.
Something you just said just sparked a memory from when I interned at WGAR. I was going to school at Ohio Media School and bartending at nights and weekends to pay the rent and working these morning shifts at GAR. And a fellow intern and I said, you have to get uncomfortable to get comfortable.
Yep.
And that would be like a motto of ours to get through. Like those, trying moments, you have to get uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
that's how you get comfortable.
Absolutely. I mean, and like I said, being 22 and 23, sitting in that studio, it was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. But it paid off. I mean, again, we look 13 years later. Just some of the things that I've done as far as the work that I put in, the extra hours and everything, it really pays off. Really pays off.
Yeah.
So, one thing, no matter in life, you can blow a lot of money, but you can eventually get money back. But one thing you can never get back is time. But the best teacher in life is experience. And how do you get experience? With time.
The time.
So you definitely want to put in time for certain things. I mean, even going back to one thing I didn't mention is I was in production as well. So I did commercials, I did imaging, and a lot of it was self-taught. And it was self-taught because I put in the time for it. When I remember one time I wanted to learn how to do the movie trailer voice. You hear me right now. I don't have a movie trailer voice. Like, but I figured out how to do it with YouTube University. So if you go on YouTube University, you can learn anything. If you have that spark, you got to let your curiosity drive you. You can never think that anything is going to be given to you. You have to go and earn it. And even if you don't think it's coming from a certain source that it should, keep grinding, because eventually your source or your break will come.
I love that. So I want to get a little personal here.
Okay.
When you were 29 years old,
Mhm.
so young,
Mhm.
you experienced a near fatal heart attack. How
Mhm.
did that horrifying moment change your whole life trajectory?
Well, according to my wife, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have got married. So that's one life change. No, but seriously, no, it makes you look at things. It makes you look at things much differently. I mean, again, at 29, I've had a history in my family of heart issues. My dad had 3 and a stroke.
Wow.
I want to say my grandfather had one. My sister has high cholesterol, and it was due to high cholesterol. But I was like, this is not going to happen until I'm like 40. So I'm going to keep doing what I want to do as far as eating fast food, etc. But now it snuck up on me. And what it did for me, as I said, it made me take things more seriously, but it made me more conscious of the things that I am eating and those habits that we do have and how working out is important. I mean, the doctor pretty much said if you didn't work out, you wouldn't be here.
Mm.
So definitely making sure I get a workout in maybe 4 or even 5 times a week. And it doesn't have to be like muscle bound workouts or anything like
Yeah.
that. I mean, what I do is I tell my friends park farther away from the grocery store, or maybe not get the fries, just get the sandwich. I'm not telling you to change everything in your life, but one decision can change your life. And for me, mine was working out.
Mm.
So what can that decision be for you? And I call that heart strong. So basically, after my heart attack, I came up with this whole heart strong movement. And the whole motto is protect your heart and everything in it. And when we say protect your heart and everything in it, you got to think about those things that are near and dear to your heart, your passions. Obviously, I've been in radio 13 years. It's near and dear to my heart. Obviously, I got married, near and dear to my heart. So not only do you protect your heart, you want to protect those things that you say that are in your heart. So you got to think about your passions, reasons to live, because it's really greater than you. So, but you have to take care of yourself. So
Yeah.
again, just making that one decision, doing something differently, working out, being conscious of what you're doing could be that decision that protects your heart and everything.
Do you practice mindfulness?
I don't. Tell me about mindfulness.
Mindfulness is more just kind of getting to a zen, taking time to breathe, just focus on your breathing, yoga,
Mhm.
meditation. It's all mindfulness, trying to keep yourself more calm. You can be as spiritual as you want with it, or just more of
Mhm.
focusing on your breath work. Like, I know I'm terrible about breathing. We breathe all day, but we don't really breathe,
Yeah, we don't. We
you
don't give
know?
the lungs that air it needs.
Yeah. And that calms your heart rate.
Right.
Something I need to be better about. But
Yeah, and I actually have. I tried yoga, but my body don't really work for yoga.
but maybe meditation is something. There's great
Yeah,
apps out there like Calm and
yeah,
YouTube. I'm big on finding things on YouTube, like
yeah,
meditation
absolutely.
series.
Yeah, and I was
Yeah.
doing some stuff on YouTube too. And I'm involved in the American Heart Association as well. One thing to mention, I'm the president of the Young Professionals Board, and I also hold a seat on the board of directors. And the Young Professionals Board last week actually had a event about mental health, which is a big thing these days. And
Yes.
one of our guests talked about the insight timer because he practices mindfulness and just taking time to just, I don't know if you say enjoy the moment, but just realize what's going on around you. And as you
Be
said,
present.
yeah, be present and just not let the worries of the world just cave down on you.
I think being present actually is a good tip too for just your work life, working in radio and
Absolutely.
television and whatever form of media, because, we can focus on the 10 steps ahead, the next thing we need to do, but we forget to be in that moment with that experience.
That's a great point. I said this to my wife the other day. It's like, let's look around, let's remember the smells, our what's around us, our what we see, because how will we remember this memory like in 10 and 20 years?
Yeah.
Because the thing is with the memory, I mean, you might be in the moment, but then your mind starts to make up things, right?
Yeah.
So I guess in the sense of mindfulness, I do take time sometimes to say, hey, this is a great moment. Like, let me just, what do I really want to remember? Because at times I'm like, man, I wish I would have focused on that moment a little bit more. So it's like, what do I really want to remember? And what do I know I'm going to get wrong? Because I'm going to say this person had on a yellow shirt and it was really a red shirt.
Right.
But what do I really want to remember about this? And two, I think it's always fun when you get around friends and then you start talking about a memory and how different it is. Sometimes you hear a story like, no, I didn't happen. No, no,
A bad
absolutely
game of
not.
telephone.
Yeah, it's a bad game of telephone. So again, it's just like, all right, let me get the story right for the friend. Let me really think about what
Right.
this is.
Who do you find to be your biggest mentor or influence in the industry?
Man, biggest influence, mentor. Wow. I met so many great people. But one person that I will say is my mentor. Her name is Marsha Landis. She's actually a general manager VP, and she's out in the Richmond market. And I think she's helped my career tremendously just from a different insight. And we're a lot alike. I actually did a leadership academy a couple of years ago that RadioOne did, and they match you with the mentor that's exactly like you.
Oh,
And all the personality tests and everything we took were dead on because the relationship has been great. I mean, this program has been over for about 2 years, but we still make time to talk every week. So she provides great insight and just a way to look at things differently, which I greatly appreciate. But if I go down the list as other people, I mean, I'm fans of my coworkers, honestly. I mean, when we talk about Incognito, I remember when he came into our station as a night jock, just came off a part-time, and now he's syndicated. He's a night show syndicated guy.
yeah,
So it's like, man, it's great to see it. And even though he's syndicated, he still makes you feel like he's talking to you in your city. Like that's how great he is.
that's key.
Um, I want to shout out Tara Thomas, who I worked with. She's no longer in radio, but she's been in radio for years when she was in the game. And she taught me a lot. And I really appreciated the lessons that I learned from her. Bill Black, who was an operations manager here in Cleveland. I mean, he's very talented. And just the conversations that we had, just about his different tactics were very insightful because these people that I mentioned, I take something from every one of them to help me in my professional career. So it's funny because even though I'm on a digital side, sales side, I'm still pulled into programming meetings to ask for my opinion. Because again, these people, and even like a Yanni, like people who are in the programming side and been doing it for a while, it's like, okay, this is how you think. Well, based off what you've said before in your patterns, this is how you would apply that logic to this. Not saying I'm like a brainiac that smart, but you know, with patterns and when you listen to people, it's like, hey,
Right.
well, based on your philosophy, this is what would be good for you. Or maybe you're being blinded in the stardom and this is not good. So again, talking to those people, just learning from them, you can learn something from everybody. I mean,
Absolutely.
I talked about my PD who was hard as nails. At the time, I couldn't stand it. Like, I'm 22 and you got me in this studio. I should be living life. But what I always appreciate about him is he instilled hard work. He instilled in me that nothing is easy and you really got to work for it. And I'm not saying everybody should just put in a crazy amount of dues where you just need to not crack the mic for like 5 years or something like that. You just got to be ready when your time comes. And that's the lesson that I learned from him. You got to be ready for when your time comes and you got to work for it.
You do. Any final piece of advice for those that have been in the industry a long time or those that are students and interns and up and coming?
Don't be afraid to start something new on your own. The world has changed in a sense where people feel like you need an avenue or a certain medium to get places. Listen, as I said, I invented podcasts, which I stick with. That was something I did on my own. I was told to do an air check to get on there. When I didn't get the results I wanted, I said, hey, I'm gonna make my own radio show. It was completely illegal at the time because I was playing music and I didn't know, but it wasn't a thing because we didn't run into that issue yet.
Yeah.
So, but it was that ambition got me started. So for anybody who wants to be on the radio, practice your own radio show. Take your phone and record to get that voice right. Read everything you can see. For people who want to be on TV, do the same thing. Practice reading from afar and make it a conversation. Also, research things that are behind the scenes. When I joined radio, I never really knew about other positions. I thought it was just really on air and that was it. I mean, to the point where I heard traffic department for the first time. I was like, oh, we got a helicopter here? Oh, that's cool. I want to get the helicopter. You're like, no, Sam, that's what places certain spots so people can make sure they get what they pay for. So we don't have a helicopter? Oh, all right. So learn
Man.
about the different, disappointing. But learn about the different positions in radio because as much as you think you might want to be on the air or TV, you might have fun being a producer or different things of that nature. So the two things I can leave people with is let your ambition drive you. Don't wait on anything because if you're doing it, you only get better and then people notice you and then they want you on a team. So.
Well, thanks, Sam, for sharing all this great advice. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate it. A lot of great tips today, and a lot of great reminders.
Yes.
And thanks for sharing your story, your journey as
Absolutely.
well.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And thank you for tuning in. To learn more about our great organization and how you can be involved, you can visit us at cabcleveland.com and make sure you follow us on social media. Before I forget, Sam, how can we get a hold of you?
Well, you can find me on any social media with my old personality name. It's SPDA Cool Kid, cool spelled with the C. Or you can just find me on Facebook at Sam Prewitt.
Thanks, Sam.